5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning. It is, now I know what day it is. I'm actually pretty awake. It is Wednesday night for me, Thursday morning for you guys. We just had Bible study a little while ago. We did Glory When Heaven Invades Earth, Part 6. And I really hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you're missing out. I think it was probably, man, they're all good, honestly. I don't know which one I like better, but I think it was pretty important stuff, to learn, to know, and all that. And if you did watch that, then and in case you don't know, there's been more hospital drama. And most of you probably know already because you watched the Bible study, but in case you didn't, I was pretty upset. Sharon was pretty upset because she was about to be released to a rehabilitation place, to help her walk and strengthen her muscles. They said she had to be there between 10 and 14 days. They were going to release her tomorrow, take her by ambulance tomorrow because she's feeling better. She's feeling a little bit stronger. She's getting up, being a little bit more independent. I mean, not a whole lot, but a whole lot compared to a week ago. And but the problem is that the rehab required one thing, a COVID test. Didn't think nothing much of it. Why? Because they tested her in order to even admit her into the hospital. Just to admit her to the hospital, she had to be tested for COVID and came back negative. And then right now we were talking, I was about ready to go to Bible study, getting her stuff ready because they were going to come get her in the morning. And it would have been too early for me to be there. So I was just kind of helping situate things. She was situating her things in her duffel bag. I was getting ready to go to Bible study, thinking that she's going to go. And then the nurse comes, really nice nurse. And she comes and says, I got some bad news. I don't know how to break it to you, so I'm just going to say it. You tested positive for COVID. I got confused. Because I'm like, my wife has been laying on that same bed since she got here, and you guys tested her and she was negative. And I know I didn't bring it to her. You know why? Because I've been sitting next to her for a week. And you guys know I come home. I don't even see Abraham or Matthew. I come home exhausted, do these videos, and go straight to bed. I've had no contact with people. So she got it from this hospital. I didn't know what to think. I got mad. Got worried at the same time. We've had many people get it from the church. Most of them got right through it. My wife's in a weakened state. So that upset me. The fact that somebody didn't do their job. And so then they tell me, once you leave, they're gonna move her to another wing, which obviously is where COVID people are at. And Sharon has no symptoms at all, nothing. She kind of felt a little bit of a cold because here's the thing, though, is where they moved her yesterday closer to the vent. And I don't know if you guys know or remember, she can't even have a fan in the room because if she has a fan in the room and that wind blows, the next day she wakes up congested. So she was feeling a little bit of that this morning, but no sore throat, no fever, none of that stuff. And they move her up to the COVID room. Once I left, I couldn't come back. So then I said, what's going to happen? They're like, well, the rehab ain't going to accept you. She goes, but because you tested positive, she goes, you have no symptoms, so you're asymptomatic or something. Basically, like you got it, but showing no symptoms. She goes, that's good news. She goes, the second part is that because the rehab won't take you, you can release straight to home, to quarantine at home. And the insurance has to pay for somebody to give you therapy at home because you can't go into the rehabilitation. So now I'm like, so as long as she builds up her strength and she can be released. So basically, yeah. So that's what we're praying for, So anyways, man, I feel like if you already heard this in Bible study, you're having to hear it again. And I apologize. But those of you who are hearing it for the first time, which then puts me at risk because I was there the whole time with her. So now I have to get tested tomorrow for the first time because, I got to pastor a church and I'm not going to be going places with the church family, with that kind of risk. I love them too much. So either way, I feel great. Yeah, you've been hearing me clear my throat all this time because of my allergies, but I feel great. I did take some Mucinex, because when my allergies do get bad, I do get congested. I've been like that all week, and my eyes start itching, and I have to do that nasal spray, and you guys know I do it every year, but other than that, I feel good and I feel strong, but still I'm going to get tested. So now I got to self-quarantine. I have a guest speaker coming this Sunday, so I wasn't going to preach anyways, but man, it would have been nice to be there. But if I get tested tomorrow, which is going to be a Thursday, I doubt I'm going to have the results by Sunday. So anyways, man, it's a big old mess, but I wanted to share with you a scripture tonight out of the book of Galatians. In the book of Galatians, let's see, where are we at? Chapter 1. The book of Galatians is interesting because I've always told you that Paul would write letters to certain cities, like Philippi. So therefore you have the book of Philippians, Thessalonica. So therefore you have the book of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Well, Galatians is not a city. There's no city of Galatia. Galatia is actually a region, or like we would say a county. So Galatia is like a county. It's a region, a certain area. So Paul wrote this letter to the Galatians, and he shares something about his testimony here that's really interesting because I think, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday that where we were talking about Paul's conversion. And Paul has this huge moment with Jesus where Jesus says, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he tells him, "I'm Jesus who you persecute." He got blind. Somebody had to pray for him for the blindness to leave. So Paul gets saved. His name was Saul, but God changes his name to Paul. That's not you anymore. That's why I always tell people, I'm not Sir Dyno anymore. I'm David. I have a new name, And he did not get saved and all of a sudden look for a platform, look for a church, look for a pulpit. He actually did the opposite. And maybe sometimes we should take some of that advice. So he first gets saved, and then in Galatia, he tells them what he did after he got saved. And this is, let's see, where do we read from? Let's start at 11. The point where I'm going to get to is down at 18, but I kind of feel like we want to read it in context. Verse 11 says, "I make known to you," this is Paul writing a letter to the Galatian church, that region. And he says, "I make known to you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to men." So he's saying, I'm not sharing a gospel with you that other men told me. And some people get confused because they're like, well, how come Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Acts is all before Galatians? Obviously, he learned it from there. But actuality, the letters of Paul, some of them predate the gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Galatians is one of those. He wrote this before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote the story of Jesus. So he's telling them, the gospel which was preached to me is not according to men. So he's claiming that Jesus himself gave him the gospel. He goes on. He goes even deeper. He says, for I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came through revelation of Jesus Christ. He's making a huge claim. He's like, listen, I didn't talk to Matthew. I didn't sit with Peter. I didn't sit with James. No other man taught me this. Everything I learned was a revelation that was given to me by Jesus himself. Right? So then in verse 13, he says, for you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism. He goes, you guys know my reputation. You guys know that I was a Pharisee. You guys know the type of person that I was. He goes, you've heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and I tried to destroy it. So he's sharing his testimony. He's like, man, I was such a Pharisee. I was such a religious ruler that I tried destroying the church. I tried crushing it. And I persecuted the church of God beyond measure. Like what the average person would do, I went above and beyond to try to stop this Jesus movement. And then he says, and I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions of my fathers. So look at what he's saying. He's like, man, I advanced even the everyone around me, all the elders around me. He goes, I surpassed them. He goes, that's how zealous I was. That's how on fire I was to be this Pharisee. To be a Jewish religious leader. He was, I exceeded everybody. In verse 15, he says, but when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately confer with flesh and blood. So he's like, man, you know what? He goes, when the time came for me to surrender my life to the Lord, when God revealed himself to me, he revealed that I should preach Jesus to the non-Jews. He was given an assignment, and some of us, we were given an assignment. There's people that I know that go certain places, and maybe they're not places I would go. But you know what? That's not my assignment. That's their assignment. And maybe there's places I go and reach and somebody else doesn't, because that's my assignment. But I love the fact that he says, I did not immediately confer with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me. So he's like, man, as soon as I got saved, I didn't go running to the next human. Matter of fact, I didn't even go to Jerusalem where the original apostles, where the OGs are at. I didn't do that. I didn't go over there. He goes, but I went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus. So he went to the Middle East, or Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, and went back to Damascus, back where he was from. And I like this verse. Then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter. So Paul, being a Pharisee of Pharisees, highly educated, surpassed his contemporaries, surpassed the elders of other Pharisees, has an encounter with Jesus, and doesn't immediately go back to try to convert them, or try to talk to them, or try to be a part of them, or try doing anything. He had to settle this stuff within himself. So what did he do? He took 3 years to build himself up. And this is the problem right here. And I know it sounds harsh to some people because you feel like, well, I got to do this now. I got to do this now. I got to preach the gospel now. I got to be a Christian. I got to make Christian rap songs now. The life of ministry will crush you if you're not ready. The life of ministry will destroy you. Not that ministry destroys you, but what comes against you. The pressures from the outside world, the pressures of this world, like when you put something underwater, after a certain feet, it'll crush. They say that those things that they put people in these bubbles to kind of go and with cameras, these things, these round things, and they drop them in so they can film what's around. If it goes so deep, that piece of metal will literally crush like a can because the pressure is too much. If Paul hadn't took those 3 years, the life would have crushed him. He faced so much opposition. He faced so many things, and it's sad because I have a close person I consider my brother. Recently, he went through something. Him and his spouse actually went through something. And the way it looks like the crushing happened. Now, is anything impossible for God? No, God could do anything. God could restore anything. But I realize that some people have the talk. They have what they think is the heart, but they don't have the preparation. And when life hits you and you're not prepared, it will crush you. So it's like, if somebody wants ministry, but they're not called, it'll crush you. It will crush you. You got to make sure that whatever ministry you're doing is what you're really called for. And there's only one way is just in prayer time with the Lord and asking the Lord. And a lot of times you can tell because the desire isn't even yours. It comes from a different place. And it's like, honestly, when God called me to preach, I argued with God. I'm like, Lord, I don't want to preach. I don't want to preach. And it wasn't so much that I didn't like preaching. It's that I was in the limelight all the time. I was doing concerts and car shows and autograph signing. I was doing movies and just everybody knowing who I was. And I'm like, Lord, really? Like, I don't want to be that guy. People are going to think that I just want the attention. God, I don't lay this on me. I don't want this. I just want to serve you. And I want to study because I'm the study type of person. I like reading. I like learning. I like soaking things up. And I'm just like, God. And I remember saying, and if you've heard me say this, because I really say that to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, let me be the guy in the 5th row sitting there and helping clean up the church and becoming a part of a church family. And just let me be there in the 5th row, not so much close to the front, not not so much in the back, just kind of right there in the middle. And just let me live a godly life. That's all I wanted. I didn't want this. And I distinctively remember hearing his voice inside, not an audible voice, saying, oh, you would be in the limelight for Satan, but not for me. I'm like, God, don't do that to me, man. Don't say like that. It ain't even like that, Lord. And that's how I would talk to him, kind of like not all intellectual or nothing. I'm like, come on, God, come on, man. Don't do me like that. I was in a cell just talking to the Lord like that. And I felt silence. Like, he's a gentleman. He's not going to force me. I mean, scripture says many are called, few are chosen. Or many, did I say that backwards? Yeah, no, that's right. And I remember it was literally within the hour where I just heard silence. I felt silence from heaven. And I'm just like, all right, God, I'll do what you want. But I made a deal with him. I'm like, listen, okay, I'll preach your gospel on one condition, Lord. And it's funny because sometimes God entertains us. And believe it or not, I am dead serious. This is what I asked. I said, God, I'll do it on one instance. That I preach like you. You got to understand, I was already saved for 15 months. I'd already read the Bible like 3 times by this time, plus individual studies. I was in prison for 15 months at this time, so I had a lot of time to read. And so I told God, Lord, if I'm going to preach, then let me preach like you. Let me preach simple. I don't want to preach eloquent. I don't want to preach with a huge vocabulary. I want to preach like you, just simple things that stir the hearts of the men and women, that they feel a stirring in them and they don't even understand why. Lord, that's my prayer. I said to Solomon, he asked you for wisdom. You know, and all I ask is that whenever I preach you, that it just stirs the hearts of the men and the women. That's all I ask. Now, I don't know the hearts of men and women, so that was my prayer. I don't know if I'm accomplishing it. You guys would know. I don't know. You know, but as I wouldn't be doing this for my own self. I do it because he called me. You know, he's called many people and not everybody says okay. You know, it's like he gives us a choice. And I'm not saying just to preach. I'm saying teaching. I'm saying, and in anything. I mean, sometimes some of you have jobs that's your ministry and you don't even realize it. You know. But yeah, man, I just wanted to talk to you guys for a little bit. I know they're kind of short. You know, it's just not the same without Sharon here. You know, I don't have nobody to joke with, you know, and whatnot. So I know they're a little bit shorter, but you guys understand. You guys get it, you know. But I'm going to let you guys go. Have a good night. God bless you. Hopefully something about this spoke to you in the book of Galatians. And make sure, put some cinnamon in your coffee. Have a great day. Have a blessed day. Continue to pray, you know, and for us, for Sharon, to get her home. You know, I just want to get her home. I want her to to be strong enough to prove to them she's strong enough to come home so I can go get her. You know, she needs to be here. You know, and like I'm seriously taking this to Lord. I'm like, Lord, you said you give me the desires of my heart. He says it. He says in Scripture that anything that we ask, he will give to us. And that's not a selfish thing to ask. I'm not asking him for gold. I'm not asking him for riches. I'm not asking him for fame. I'm asking the Lord, you give me the desires of my heart, then let me go get my wife and bring her home. That's the desire of my heart, Lord. That's it right there. That's all I need. I don't need nothing else. Just need her. And he says he'll give me the desires. So I'm going to bed like with that check cashed into the bank of God. So, Lord, ball's in your court, and there's nothing impossible for God. So, alrighty, guys. Have a good day, a blessed day, and I will see you tomorrow with more updates. God bless. Bye.